Hello friends and welcome back. I'm Nick and you have arrived at MSFS Flight Plans, a channel 100% dedicated to breathing new life into that same old sim routine as we explore the coolest, most interesting, best looking spots in the world, learning all about each of them as we go along. We've got a fresh member recommended flight over Sicily today, referred to as Sicilia by the locals, which is cool not only because there's lots of stuff to see out here, but prior to this trip I had never really ventured into this region, at least not up close, and considering our proximity to the graphical disaster that is Malta, this place looks pretty dang good by comparison. And I picked out the Simworks Studios version of the PC-12 for this flight, which will also be a first for our channel. And it's going to feel a little weird flying so close to the ground on this plane, but we needed something that could power climb and also move fairly quickly for this trip. So it's definitely going to check those boxes for us. And as I had mentioned on our Discord page, if you're a member of that, and I'll tell you how to become a member later, we've been flying a lot of really simple planes lately, so I needed something that would kind of let me stretch my legs a little bit, get a little frustrated with the complications. You know, I didn't open the window last time. I'm going to see how that sounds. Okay, let's remove that thing. Let's start with that, and let's turn the standby bus on. And you better believe I got my checklist out for this one. So the inertial separator on, and then the two batteries on. And I think open means on in this thing. I hope I'm not shutting it off when I do this, but we're going to push open. Okay, those are good to go. And the fuel reset button. I'm not sure what that does because it doesn't seem to reset anything, but all the tutorials I saw said push that, so we're pushing that, and everything looks just fine. And after that, we're going to push the starter and let the NG get up to 11. So here's our NG over here, so let's hit the starter. There it is. And once it gets to 11, we will put the condition lever on low idle, ground idle. And there it goes. Well, that's good to go. Now we can turn our two generators on and the avionics on. Gen 1. Oh, that's reset. There we go. Alright, everything is coming to life now. This is great. Alright, let's go ahead and shut that before it gets too loud. Okay, so now we turn the standby bus off, and now we have to do something very strange if you don't have this plane. It's a little bit irritating, but we'll do it anyway. So it has a pusher-shaker system for probably stall warnings and ground crash recovery, I guess, for lack of a better word, and you got to kind of go through the paces or this pusher light will never go off. So we'll go ahead and get that done. Let's go ahead and get that set. I wish that would turn on because I could hit that too. While we're here, let's remember to push the test button on our autopilot, or that will not work once we get up in the air. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do for this is we're going to... Autopilot trim. That's the test for that. So we're going to push the pusher button. We have to first put the flaps at 15. Okay, so let's do that. This is so complex. Then push the pusher button, then advance the throttle. Oh gosh, okay, so pusher, advance the throttle just a little bit. That'll make it test start. Once it goes in, we push that button, pull the throttle back down, then push the pusher button again to push it back out. A lot of pushing right here, and then push that. When I push this one more time, that should turn off, so let's see. No, it didn't. Alright. Let's try that one more time because it's going to drive me crazy if that light's going on. Pusher test. Throttle. Turn that off. Bring the throttle back. Okay, now it's off. Alright, we still have to take the pusher off. Good grief. I wish you could just kind of skip that, but whatever. That's what we were asking for with this plane. Okay, so now our cooling system on and the environmental control system on. So cooling is over here. There's that. The ECS system is over here. I think that's what that stands for. That's on auto. And now the pusher button's on again. Well, forget it. I'm just going to let it stay on. I'll just have to remember that that's what that is if I look down there. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and set our initial cruise altitude at 3,000. 1, 2, 3. Go ahead and arm that. Set our baro. Put our transponder. That thing finally decided to join the party. Thank you very much. Put that on standby. And then we need to push this P-test button. I can't remember what that is, but we have to push that. System OK. Okay. Oh my gosh. Alright. Well, I think we're ready to go. And look who we have with us today. It's Chet's wife. You guys know how I feel about her. This is Karen, spelled just like Karen, but she told me she's recently changed it to Karen. Probably for reasons we can all recognize. I didn't really want her to come, like I never wanted her to come, but I said, Chet, if you will let her wear your captain's outfit you wore last Halloween with the tie, she can come. And he said there's no way she's going to wear the tie. I said she's not coming. And you can see she's here and she's got the tie on, which is just fantastic. Okay, I think we're ready to go. Let's go ahead. The runway's a little bit behind us, so let's look at the Google map real quick before we do that, just so you can see where we're going. So let's back out just a little bit here. So here's Sicily. There's the boot of Italy right there. We're leaving from Catania here. And the airport's right around here. This is a photogrammetry city here. The only one that we're going to see on this flight. And I'll tell you about some add-ons I have in just a minute. So we're going to take off this way, come out here just to get a little bit of altitude. We're going to get up those 3,000 feet so we can take a nice look at the port and the city. And then come over here, swing in this way under Paterno. Look for a little amusement park they've got down there. Fly up here by Cinturripe. And then check out Mount Etna. That's this huge thing right here. Come across the side of it because it's really hard to get up to 12,000 feet to get over the top of it. And then let's see, we're going to come right down here and we're going to catch up with the coast again at Taormina. Cruise along the coast for about 15 miles. Come up here and check out these mountains because there's a POI on top of these mountains in one of the add-ons. Come back down here, check out Messina. Cruise around it this way. There's some neat looking forts and stuff down there. And then we got to come back out this way to come back down to get ready to land at Calabria right here. So it's going to be about 52 minutes in the air according to the sim. The whole flight is I think about 120 miles. So it should be a lot of fun. Looks really cool. All right, so let me make sure everything else is good to go over here, and then we'll start our taxi. And I need to go left, or I might hit that fuel truck or whatever that is in that building, so we'll leave our flaps at 15, because that's the takeoff setting anyway. Let's check our barrel one more time. That's good to go. And go ahead and start moving. So the two add-ons that I have, which will be linked in the video description along with this exact flight plan, if you want to take it just as we are, all you have to do is bring it into little NavMap once you have that link. And if you don't know how to use little NavMap, I have a couple of different tutorials in our how-to section. So you can check those out. They're very brief. You're not going to have to watch for an hour to figure it out. You will know almost everything there is to know worth knowing about little NavMap if you watch those two tutorials. Maybe even one of them will get you there. But the two add-ons are one for... Is this a taxiway? I think it is. Yeah, okay. One for the airport that we're coming into, which didn't seem to do all that much out there. But I didn't really take a good look at it before I put that in. And then up by Messina, there's an add-on pack that adds lots of POIs, and a couple of them along the coast as we're heading up there, which I thought was pretty cool because it'll add some things we otherwise would not be able to see. So that's fantastic. One other thing I want to mention, those two add-ons, of course, will be linked in the video description along with the flight plan and the link to join our Discord server. Boy, that thing is growing like crazy, and we are having a lot of fun in there. And on that note, we have selected the winners of last quarter's flight recommendation competition. That's where members can get onto Discord, recommend a place for me to check out. All I need is the departure and arrival codes and a few spots to see in between. I'll draw out the flight plan. If it's good enough to take the flight, we'll upload it, and at the end of the quarter, we'll vote on the winner. In last quarter, we had 3 entries, and there was a 2-way tie for first place. It was our Australia flight and our Whistler Mountain flight. So we split the kitty, which was everything that YouTube has paid me so far, which was just a little over 50 bucks. And I'm giving each of those guys $25 gift cards to the sim vendor of their choice. Thank you so much, guys, for participating in that. And check this out. In this plane, if you didn't know it already, you can use your yoke to steer on the ground, which is pretty cool. So that's precisely what I'm doing, just because you don't get to do that very often. And by the way, Mike Coffey, one of our winners, you might only hear it here because I know you watch all of our flights. I need your email address, so hop on that Discord server, let me know where it is so I can send you that gift card. Otherwise, I have no way to get it to you. Thank you very much, Mike. He was the one that recommended that Whistler flight way back in the day. So if you got a spot, join our Discord server. That link will be in the video description. Let me know where to go. We'll check it out. Get in the running. Okay, so landing lights on. And we'll put our condition lever to full. It's just really driving me. This is the first time I haven't been able to get the pusher light to go off. I probably did something in the wrong sequence. Alright, transponder to altitude mode. That's good. And let's check our fuel one more time. Check our barrel one more time. Alright, you guys ready? Let's do this. Here we go. This is a fun plane. I love all these turboprops. Very cool. Airspeed's alive. And our rotate speed's around 70 knots, so we'll start giving it some back pressure. Boy, that picks a weight right up off that nose wheel, doesn't it? Good grief. And up we go. Alright, positive rate of climb. Gears up. And flaps up. Beautiful. And there's Etna in the background. We'll get a nice look at that bad boy. Alright, let's get up over 400 feet to make sure our autopilot's not going to kick us off of that. I'm not sure what that alarm's for, but it will stop in just a second. Okay, autopilot on. Nav mode. Vertical speed. We'll climb at 1,000 feet a minute. And you can adjust the vertical speed here. All you have to do is click that, and then you can start turning it, but it's just one too many things for me to try to manipulate with the mouse, so I'm not going to do that. So we're just beyond the photogrammetry range here. You're going to see some cars and stuff that look a little flat. Once we come back over the city, like right down there, it'll look a lot better. And even that'll look fine once we get higher. I mean, shoot, we're only, what, 800 feet above the ground? So that'll get a lot better. Okay, let's go ahead and pull that throttle back just a little bit to get that torque down in the green. Looks good. Everything's fantastic. So we are leaving from the city of Catania, the second largest in Sicily, after the capital of Palermo up on the northwestern coast. And they've got a little over 1 million people in the greater metro area down here. Our airport is, or was, while we were there, Fontana Rossa, which is the island's main airport and the 5th largest in all of Italy. And if you feel like you want to take something bigger or faster for this trip, the runway is just under 9,000 feet, so you should be fine with pretty much anything other than your biggest jetliners. And the city, along with most of the others in Sicily, was first populated by Greek settlers in the 8th century BC. This was, I mean, they had native inhabitants before that, but the Greeks were really the first ones to start building stuff up out here. And this place has been no friend of Mother Nature. It was nearly wiped off the map twice by some massive earthquakes. One in 1169 and another one in 1693. And was almost buried by a lava flow from Mount Etna in 1669. Okay, we're 1,000 feet away from our cruise altitude. Just perfect. Perfect timing. But in between disasters, it was also a cultural hotspot, being a major player throughout the Italian Renaissance period, which spanned from the 13 to the 1600s. During which time it sprouted Sicily's first university, which is still down there today, but it looks like all the other buildings jammed in there, so we won't be able to pick it out. And it's really hard to spot anything, because it all looks kind of the same, and it's really jammed in there. But one thing that we will be able to see is Castle Ursino, and that was built in the mid-1200s by Emperor Frederick II, King of Sicily. And it looks pretty much like most of the other castles built all over Europe around that time, kind of squat-looking with big turrets on the corners, and we will be able to see that one. And one of the very few buildings that didn't collapse during the 1693 earthquake. The ships down here have trees growing out of them, unfortunately, so I'm going to try to get them behind our pillar as we're coming through. This one's got a lot of trees growing out of it. This one's just got one or two, but we probably won't be able to see those. We're probably going to have 2 hard freezes. I've experienced them on every flight I've taken so far. One just as we're coming over the mountain, and one down along the coast. And once we get by the real busy areas, we might get a little bit of stuttering. This is a pretty complex plane, and I got the graphics turned down pretty low, but I didn't want to turn them down any further, or else things would have started looking really naked off in the distance there. Alright, so let's come around here and spot the castle. It's going to be just on the other side of the port. Look at that. That is densely populated. The university is somewhere in this area right here. And the castle is right there. See it? See the turrets on the corners? We're going to take a turn here, get a nice look at it. Let's look at that tree coming out of the ship just while we're here. See it right there? You know, there was a lot of that going up by Naples, if you saw that flight a long, long time ago. The area was just beautiful around there, but trees growing out of all the ships. And this is Angelo Musimino Stadium. And this place has been around for a long time. They built that in 1937. And it's currently home to the Calcio Catania football team. And that's soccer-style football. It has a quote-unquote official capacity of around 23,000, but I read they can squeeze a few thousand more in there if the price is right. Okay, so we need to get to flight level 4,000 now. Arm that, and let's go ahead and adjust our vertical speed. And this is a pretty technical flight. If you download the bookmark file for a little NavMap, which will also be included in the video description, it will have little markers of where you're going to want to adjust your flight level. Otherwise, you'll be surprised and not be able to get to where you need to be quick enough. You'll feel like you're too close to the ground. You might smack into Mount Etna. Alright, so you can see here where the photogrammetry is ending. Most of these bridges look great, even in the out of the photogrammetry zones, especially down by the coast. They're running in and out and between, like through all the mountains. They all look really cool. Got some power lines running through there, just great. And this area here is like a little desert. They got a big park out here. And apparently it's quite a natural wonder. And there's another one up ahead of us too. Although it looks to be pretty dry out there too, doesn't it? But that might just be because the terrain level of details turned down so low. Okay, up next is the only amusement park we're going to see on this trip. Actually, it's the only one I could find anywhere on the island. And it's called, rather fittingly, Etna Land. And I couldn't find a wiki page for it, so I didn't have a way to get any details about how old it is, but I did find an old news article from the LA Times, oddly enough, heralding the opening of a theme park section in 2013 to supplement what was originally just a water park. So I guess it's at least 11 years old. I think I saw somewhere that it might have opened in 2001, but it's not going to look great here in the sim because we're out of the photogrammetry area. But you can kind of tell it's an amusement park if you know that's what you're looking at. And here it is right here. It's going to come into view right behind that little A pillar there. And when we look at it at the end on the satellite map, you'll tell it's definitely an amusement park, but some of the stuff's just a little bit flat. But that's where it is. Kind of out in the middle of nowhere, isn't it? Alright, in just a second, I'm going to hop in the back of the plane. We're going to check out a town on the right called Paterno, which is also very old and probably started out with native inhabitants known as Sicily around 3500 BC. Before the Greeks rolled in during the 400s and started building it out. Let's go ahead and hop back there. I think I need to click over here. Yep, I do. It'll be coming into view here in just a second. And there's one castle down here called Paterno Castle, and this one is of Norman origin, being built in 1072. And like most Norman castles up north in England and France and places like that, it's just a big rectangle on its side. Alright, it is right there. Pretty impressive, huh? Just a big square. That's all there is to see. Pretty amazing, huh? Alright, let's get back up in the cockpit. I don't know if I can find my camera. There we go. An interesting story about that castle is that a lady found a hoard of silver pots and dishes while working in a field near the base of the tower in the early 1900s, maybe 1909, if I'm remembering that correctly. And not having any idea what she'd stumbled across, she sold it to some art dealers over in Catania for pocket change. Well, it turns out those items were of Greek origin and extremely rare, likely crafted around 400 BC. And I don't know what the flim-flammers of Catania sold it for, but the article that I was reading said it was for a princely sum. I wonder if they even told her about that. Probably not. But they hid the spot where she found it for quite a while. It wasn't until the 1930s or 40s where they even told anybody where it was in case anyone else wanted to go try to dig anything up out there. But apparently no one found anything else. Alright, we're going to see something very interesting on the top of these hills up here to our left, right in this region here, and you really got to get up to like 10,000 feet or higher to get the best view of it, but we will check them out from the satellite map so you'll see exactly what it looks like. It's the town of Cinturipe, which is probably pronounced Cinturipe. That's how you say everything in Italian. Which, instead of being built around the base of the mountains, was built along the ridges, giving it the appearance of a starfish when you look at it from up above. It's really strange looking. And that's also been around since ancient days, but was a Hellenistic icon during the Greek occupation, with Cicero describing it as by far the largest and richest city of Sicily. And he said that just before the start of the 1st century, though there is some speculation that he might have been using a touch of hyperbole. So look at this. Not much down here at all. Everything is right up on those ridges. And it sounds like there's still all kinds of ruins down there, but they're too small to see from up here. And I did fly right over it before. But you really need to be high to take that in from the best angle, because it looks crazy. Okay, so now we got to get it up to 8,500 to cross over Etna. So we'll start turning that up a little bit. And it does have an inner and outer ring, but it's just so hard to get those things dialed in. Alright, arm. And we need to climb pretty quick, so I'm going to do it at 1,500 feet a minute. Alright, here we go. Taking our turn. This next town on our right is going to be the town of Adrano, and its history is about like everything else. First the natives, then the Greeks, then the Normans, then the Romans. And they've also got a little Norman castle down there. We'll hop in the back in just a second. But I could barely see it on the satellite map, the castle, so there's no way we're going to find it from up here. But I'll show that to you on the satellite map too when we're done. Alright, let's go climb in the back. I love sitting back here. I always love sitting back here. This is just so great. I mean, you really feel like you're in a plane. And in addition to our co-pilot, look, we got some other passengers up here. Those guys look a little fidgety. What are you guys, tweaking? Freebasing back here or something? Don't make me send Chet's wife back here. She'll put it into that real quick. Alright, as we come over the eastern side of the town, we're going to see Etna Stadium here in just a second. And I couldn't get much info about that place, but I figured I'd mention it since we will be able to see it. And it is... what is it, right under our wing? Oh, there it is. It's right there. Not real impressive, but out there in the middle of that big field all by itself, so I figured I'd point it out. And there's one more structure. We're going to hang back here for just a second. Well, can we see that castle? No, it's right in the middle of town. It's just a square like everything else. So this place calls itself a castle that we're going to check out, and it might either be called Soliciana or Spiralieri. And I saw it called both on the maps, but this is a huge winery right here, or vineyard, and this thing was built in the 1800s, and I think it was built to be a winery. I think that's all it ever was. But those vineyards look pretty cool, so I figured I'd point that out too. Very nice. Okay, we got to check out Etna. Well, let's get back up front. And there she is. Big, very big. On my first flight out here, I flew up over the top because I wanted to look down the crater. You guys know how I feel about that. But unfortunately, the terrain is pretty jacked up around the top. We'll get closer and you'll see it's all messed up here. And I think that's probably because this thing is just smoldering and smoking all the time. So there probably was not a good image coverage. You can kind of see a little bit haziness here, but the plume of smoke that I saw on the Google map is kind of coming down this direction here. So I think it was just covering the terrain. So we'll just kind of skirt along the side here. And this one, unlike many of the other volcanoes we've seen recently, is not of the shield variety, but a stratovolcano, which means when it pops, it really pops. Though most of the more recent episodes have been smaller bursts along its flanks. And we'll see some of the little side vents here as we come across it. But the summit's over 11,000 feet, and is the largest of the active volcanoes in Italy, way bigger than Vesuvius. Etna's over 2.5 times taller than that one. But this looks great here. Look at this. These little flows they got coming down the side. Just beautiful. And I do have my tree removal on volcanoes pack in. I just leave that one in all the time because it's small and it takes care of putting trees out there. Look how bad that looks up there. There's one of the vents. Look at that. Very cool. And check this out. I got a surprise for you. Chairlift going up the side. Gondola ride. So they got a little road coming up here, and you can even see the little gondolas on it. And I don't know what that is up there. I don't know if it's purely for tourism or if it's an observation station or both. Check that out. Look, if you got a big screen, you can even see the little gondolas. How awesome is that? Oh man, that's an incredible view. Check that out. Amazing. That's awesome. There's some more big vents up there. Look how bad this looks on the top. And then we got this mess here, which is probably some of the smoke plume. Whoa, look at that. Looks like they're about to have a landslide. They got a big gouge in the side of it there. Yikes. Alright, now we got to get down to 4,000 feet. As I mentioned, this is a pretty technical flight, so let's turn that back down to 0. 4,000. Whoop, 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 whoop. That's so hard. I would just do it on my external one, but I'm trying to add a little bit of realism here. Arm it. And we're going to come down at 1,500 feet a minute, and I got to pull that throttle back or we will definitely overspeed. Geologists believe the first eruptions out here occurred roughly 500,000 years ago, which is fairly recent, geologically speaking. And they say they have no idea how high this thing might have been in its past because the explosions have been so violent that it's likely blown itself to pieces and piled back up again several times over the years. And they said it's also had several landslides that created some mega tsunamis, impacting regions all the way on the other side of the Mediterranean, near modern Israel, which is about 1,000 miles to the east. So this is the Strait of Messina right here, and that's the very tip of the toe of the boot of Italy. And we'll be landing probably somewhere in this area here once we come around the edge of Sicily. Alright, the area we're heading to is right down here, and they got some nice looking coastlines, a couple of bad looking spots, but most of them look pretty good. And it's a town called Taormina, and it sounds like it's a real hot spot for well-to-do gay men and artists these days. Presumably the latter due to the former, as those guys seem to have an eye for fine art. I need to make sure I let Chet know about that, just so he can have a bit of a backup plan. Not that you're having any marital problems. Not that Chet doesn't spend half of every flight telling me about how miserable he is all the time. But aside from a bunch of resorts, there's a few things I want to try to spot on this pass. There's going to be an old amphitheater of Greek origin, which we'll definitely be able to see, and that was built around 300 BC, but was later heavily modified by the Romans. And directly north of that, there's supposed to be an aerial tramway, and I forgot to look for it last time, so we'll see if we can spot that. It's like within a quarter of a mile of it. And I thought I saw something that looked like it may have been that on my last trip, but we'll see if we can get it this time. And there's supposed to be a castle up on the big hill in the center of town, just east, or I guess west of the amphitheater. But I really couldn't discern anything up there last time, but I wasn't really looking for a castle because I didn't know it was there, so we'll take a closer look, see if we can find that. And that thing is called Saracen Castle, and archaeologists think it was originally the site of an acropolis when the Greeks were out here, later being fortified into a stronghold by the Romans. But it was besieged by Muslim invaders for 2 years in 902 AD, after which they rebuilt it to its current stature. And unfortunately, today it's closed to the public. So our view, if we can see it at all, is probably going to be as good as anyone's going to get. Alright, once we hit 4,000, I need to remember, bring our throttle back up, so let me just keep an eye on that for a minute. Look at that. I mean, the rivers look pretty much like they should. A little bit angular, but at least they're not running up the sides of the mountains. And there's a few spots out here where we're going to get some lacking satellite coverage like that right there. We'll see another one right next to one of our landmarks on the big mountain by where we're coming into. Okay, we may get the hard freeze now. This is about where it is, unless that was it, which would be great, because the last one was several seconds long. Alright, so you can already see some stretching here, but around the other side of it, you can even see like the individual rocks and stuff, so I don't know why some of it looks not so great, and some looks really good. Okay, so we're leveling off, and let's go ahead and turn off our inertial separator while I'm thinking about it. Alright. Look at these bridges, look at that. And that close to the ground in a valley, looking that good. And look at this, they go right into the side of the mountains. All along the coast they're going to be doing that. Really cool. Well, that heat blur may be interrupting our views of the beaches, but maybe it'll also interrupt our view of the bad mountains up here along the coast. Alright, so there's where the castle should be, right up there. And you can kind of see it. That's about what it looks like. It's just mainly an outer wall, and then there's a little thing right in the center of it there. And here's the big amphitheater. You can definitely see that. And now we just need to see if we can spot the gondola ride. It should be right around... Oh, yep, there it is. You gotta have a big screen to see it. You can see two of the little gondolas right there. You see that? That's exactly where it is. Sure enough, you can see it. You're going to need a big screen. And I think it might go... Well, it doesn't go all the way up to that castle because visitors can't go up there anymore. Look at this coastline down here. Bad. Good. Really good over here. That looks pretty good. But I bet that's a neat town to visit. Especially if you're a gay dude. I'm telling Chet to go down there. I'm not going to tell him about the gay part, though. Look at these bridges here. Just looks amazing. Alright, we got about a 15-mile hike up the coast here, so I'll tell you a little about one of Sicily's most infamous landmarks, the Mafia, or La Cosa Nostra, after it was imported into America in the 1800s. And I had to do quite a bit of research about that. I knew that the Mafia kind of had originated out here, but I spent about half an hour once I got into that reading it because it was so interesting. They think the nexus of the Mafia and Sicily is somewhat questionable because it's not like anyone was keeping records of who was involved or what they were doing. But it appears to have emerged in the 1800s when most of the formerly feudal land held by nobles out here was turned over to private ownership. And it turns out the legal infrastructure out here was not even close to adequate enough to handle all the land disputes, contract enforcements, and stuff like that. So the locals started banding together in local vigilante enforcement clans at first, eventually growing more and more organized and centralized to the point that the extra-legal enforcers were stronger and more influential than those on the government payroll. And as you can imagine, the whole thing evolved exactly as you would expect, which is not too far removed from what's going on with the cartels down in Central America. Some of these rivers running up here, that one's got a nice little channel. I thought they might go up to dams, but they don't. They just kind of run up into the mountains. But this one looks like just a huge mud flow here. Doesn't look like there's even a river in it, so I don't know if they just get big washouts sometimes or what. Look at that thing there. I wonder what that is. Maybe a little mine. So it sounds like it started out, the Mafia thing, on pretty legitimate grounds. Landowners, particularly to the west, many of whom did not live out here year-round, needed protection from the thieves and the bandits while they were away. And the island was woefully understaffed with legal law enforcement. I read they had 350 police on the whole island. So I guess it was cheaper to pay the Mafia instead of an outfit of full-time guards, and that's how it all got started. And eventually it turned into the full-blown racketeering bit, where instead of paying the Mafia for protection against miscreants, they were paying the Mafia for protection from the Mafia. But these days the organization has shifted away from the protection gig and moved into higher-yielding endeavors like drug running, gambling, money laundering. And from what I could tell, they seem to be thriving pretty well still up by Palermo on that northwestern coast. Obviously this is all AI-generated stuff, but it just looks nice. I mean, the beaches look really good. Looks really, really nice. Malta was such a disaster. This is not too bad at all. In just a minute, we're going to see some more of these roads playing peekaboo with the tunnels here. That bridge again, man, there's none of that stuff where it's filled in underneath. Looks really good. All right, here where they kind of start going in and out of the mountains. And it'll go out into the mountain, then come out for like, looks like 100 yards and back into the mountain. I bet that's an incredible drive. Look at all these little pathways going up here. We'll see some nice little crevice towns in a little bit. Ooh, it looks like they got a power line running over there. Man, they got everything for us. Unbelievable. All right, we're coming up on the town of Scaletta, which has two things that caught my attention. One of them is an in-sim POI that might be from one of those add-ons. I don't know if it's from MSFS or one of the add-ons. But right along the coast is something called Battery San Placido. And I found a few Italian websites that mentioned it, and I was able to translate them. Not that I speak Italian, but Google translated it. But all of them just mentioned that it was here, and some showed some pictures of it up close. So I don't know anything about its history, but I'm guessing probably 1700s or so. I took a close-up look at it, or later. It's kind of got that pointy palisade edges. Here's some of the bad satellite coverage spots there. But they're just small and kind of tucked in there. But the walls are way too thin for a coastal battery. This saw a lot of action in World War II out here, but naval cannons would make quick work of this thing. So we're going to take a turn here, and then we'll take a nice good look at it. And there's a palace up on the hill above it called Castle Rufo. And I did get a little info on that one. It was built in 1220 by the same guy that installed that huge place back in Catania, Frederick II. And its purpose was as a royal retreat and a stronghold to protect a major traffic route running along this coast. Look at these bridges. I just can't get over it. It's incredible. Okay, so let's see. There's where the little fortress is that they call the battery. Ooh, and they even did up some of the tunnel entrances, which you can't see in a lot of the other spots, but look at those little walls. That would have been destroyed by ship cannons. And then that castle, which again is really just small and square, kind of looks like a Norman castle's right up here. Not much to see. But I bet that looks good from up close, because that was one of the POIs. Awesome. Look at this town down here. Boy, would I love to come out and visit this place. Just amazing. Alright, we're going to cruise along the top of the Paloritani Range as we head to Mount Dinamare. At the very top of it, we're going to spot two landmarks. One is a sanctuary that's the destination of an overnight pilgrimage performed every third day throughout the month of August. I guess they start at sunset and travel up to the top of this to see the sunrise and perform some kind of service up there. I think I read that it was dedicated to the Virgin Mary, too. We're not going to hit those mountains. We're about to turn to the northeast here, just in case you're wondering. And just north of the sanctuary is something called Fort Dinamare, which according to the Google reviews is not a fort at all. And I really can't tell what it is by looking at it on the satellite map, but I'll let you guys see it from above when we're done. But whatever the purpose, I'm sure the views from up here are incredible. Alright, so here's where those two things are going to be. And unfortunately, the biggest bad satellite coverage spot on this whole flight is right here in this big spot, because I was looking for the little pathways that they take when they're doing their pilgrimage, and it looks like there's something that might wind up through that mess they got right in front of it. But this is a POI in the sim, so it probably looks really, really good, but I couldn't get too much higher because we need to come down and check out the town of Messina after we see this. But we'll get a nice look at this thing as we're coming by, and then I'll tell you about some of those islands out there. Got a little structure of some kind right up there. And we may get our next hard freeze here as we're coming out. Look at that bad area right there. What a bummer. There they are, right there. So this one here is the sanctuary. This is the thing they were calling a fort. Ooh, and they even got some little radio antennas up there. Awesome. You can see it looks like a path might go through there in real life, but that's just a disaster right there. What a bummer. But that looks cool, doesn't it? Really cool. Alright, so we're going to circle to the east to see the port city of Messina, and then head north, do a 180, and then get ready for our approach. And I don't feel like this is a 50-minute flight. I feel like we're burning right through this. So this is the third largest city on the island with about 650 residents, and I think their big industry out here nowadays is tourism. We're going to take a look at their big port in just a second. And along the way, we're going to be treated to three forts. The first is Fort Gonzaga, which went up in the mid-1500s for fear of Ottoman invasion. And when we see it, you'll notice it's a decent way from where the historic downtown area would be, and pretty far from the water. I read that they constructed that outside the original city wall to protect the city from a mountain attack from the west. There it is right there. See it? And it's nice looking too. That's also a POI. And they're still using that thing all the way up through World War II to defend the area from Allied attacks. Alright, these next two are in more traditional spots along the water. On the southern shore of this cape, it's right here, we'll see it just a second when we turn, is Real Citadel, and that one was built by the Spanish, if you can believe it, during the 6 years they controlled the island from 1680 to 1686. And they also used that place all the way up through World War II, where it suffered some pretty heavy bomb damage. and everything above ground was left just as it was after the war. Which would be cool to check out, but apparently the really cool stuff is underground, which is awesome. So you can see where some of the points on it were there, and I think they just use this as like a warehouse or something now, but they said they got a lot of stuff underground. Look at that. Look at all these boats down here modeled. They got a cruise ship down there. Uh-oh, these guys are in trouble. Big transport. I don't know if that belongs there, because I don't see any cranes out here. And it looks like they got a big hull of a ship there. And this last fort on the point over here, which really all you can see of it now is this outer wall here, that was called Fort Salvatore. And that was built around the time of Gonzaga, that first one we saw, also for fear of the Ottomans. And a good portion of that was destroyed in an earthquake in 1908, but what's left of it is still used by the Coast Guard. So these may be some Coast Guard ships down here, but this is the only thing that's really still left, is this outer wall. And there was something of significance for that thing. That's also a POI, and I cannot remember what the heck that is. I wish I could. I'm sorry about that, but that was something it seemed was kind of significant. Okay, so a few things to point out while we're up here. This thing sticking out of the water dead ahead of us over there, that peninsula, is Cape Milazzo, and that's about 15 miles out. And over there are the Eolian Islands, all volcanic, and probably worth a trip if the satellite coverage is good. I need to remember to put that on my hit list. And one of those islands, there's 7 big ones, is Stromboli Island, home to Mount Stromboli, which is one of the most active volcanoes on Earth. That thing's been erupting almost without pause for the last 2,000 years, so yeah, we need to check that out. There's Stromboli right there, and it's a big boy too. So those islands to the west are about 30 miles away, and Stromboli is about 40 miles from here. And if you guys promise not to peek, I'll head over there after this flight. If it looks good, we'll do that for our next trip, because that's probably awesome. But there aren't any airports on any of the islands, so we'll need to see what we got to work with on that front. There are not a lot of big airports out here. Alright, so now we need to get down to 1,500 feet. We're going to be up over the water, so that'll be fine. Let's just take that down to 15. And arm it. And start our descent. We'll hop in the back again as we take this little turn here. Check out the town. Let's go ahead and pull that throttle back just a little bit so we don't run into issues with that. Alright, okay. Don't want me doing that. Alright, let's see what we got. Look at that. Look at the terracing and stuff on the side of that hill. Beautiful. Boy, that looks fantastic. Really, really good. So cool. The beaches down there look great. You guys still tweaking over there? Yeah, you are. That's not good. Look at that coastline. Unbelievable. Look at the detailing right along the waterline there. Just amazing. Got a big cliff with some fields on it. Love it. Alright, I just need to keep an eye on our speed. Let's slow that down some so we don't overspeed, because we're getting awfully close. Alright, so as we make this turn back to the south, we're going to see these 2 gigantic towers they got here. There's one on each side of the channel right here. Here's one, and you can see the other one over there. You'll get a better view of both of them in just a little bit. They're called the Pylons of Messina. And each of those things are 761 feet tall, and were built in 1955 to carry a 220 kilovolt power line across the strait. And they still hold the record for the longest conductor span on Earth, at just under 12,000 feet. When there was a wire on it. In 1985, they laid a 380 kilovolt cable across the bottom of the strait, and then pulled the lines down a year later. But they figured those things were cool enough to leave up, and they even protected them as historical monuments, which is awesome. See the big one on the other side there? Very cool. For a little while in 2006, I read that they let the public climb the 1,250 steps to the top of the one that's on this side, which must have been amazing and exhausting. Alright, so we're coming up into the Calabria airport on the very tip of that toe of the boot of Italy, and it's definitely the biggest from here to our departure airport back in Catania, which is about 50 miles to our southwest. And the next decent-sized strip is about 60 miles to the northeast up on the mainland. And if you thought some of these other places were old, they've got nothing on Calabria. They found evidence of Homo erectus presence up here that dates to around 700,000 years ago, which is old. And the airport we're coming into was built in 1939, so I'll trust you don't need an explanation of why they built that. in 1939. And they've got one castle in the center of town here, which you could probably spot, but I need to concentrate on getting this thing down, so I'll show you where that is at the end if you want to take a slightly different route. And this thing is kind of tough to land. I was reading that some of the reviews about the PC-12, both versions of it that they have in the sim, and apparently they have some struggles with the flight dynamics of this thing, but it feels a lot like a jetliner when you're coming in. I don't know if the wingspan is as big as the King Air, but you know how that kind of just glides and drifts and floats in? This feels kind of like that, but even a little bit harder to control. Alright, so gear speed is 170. Let's get our inertial separator back on. If that turns it on. And get our landing lights back on. And come on down to gear speed. And gears out. So up next for our flights, possibly those islands we just saw, depending on how they look. We still need to take that flight out in Turin, also in Italy. And we've got 2 other member recommended flights that I haven't even checked out yet. I built up a little backlog during our rocking out tour. And I really want to do a lunch break flight out in Key West. I have the perfect plane for that. So you can check all that stuff out. Again, if you have a recommendation you would like to throw in the pot, join our Discord server. Don't be afraid of Discord like I was. If you're an old fogey like me, it's not hard to use. Just click that link, it'll get you in there. Meet people from around the world, learn some amazing things. Alright, I need to focus on bringing this thing down. So we're about to get lined up for the runway. We'll give it 1 notch of flaps. And once we're lined up, I'll take the autopilot off. There's the runway dead ahead of us. And these aren't real long either. I think they're just over 5,000 feet. Alright, autopilot off. 2 notches of flaps. And I found I have to really trim this thing up as we're coming in too. Once it slows down, it wants to go nose down pretty hard. I mean, look at how this thing's just rocking super slow. I mean, this might be even more sluggish than like a 737. I mean, you can see how much I'm moving the yoke there. It is sluggish. Okay, so I'm starting to trim up. So I don't have to keep so much back pressure on that sucker. Give it a little more throttle. Look at that thing rolling. Good grief. So the other flights that we've got, I just took a group flight out in upstate New York over the Finger Lakes from someone who lives out there, which was just a beautiful, beautiful area. Not a ton of stuff to talk about on the ground, but it is just a stunning looking area up there. So we'll probably take that one. He said he's making a full-blown flight plan, so we'll check that out once that's in. And anything else that comes down the pike. But if you want to join us for any of the group flights, I always turn on the voice chat section when I'm taking my test flights, and I'll post on the Discord server when I'll be doing that, so if you want to join me, feel free to. Final notch of flaps. Cut the throttle a bit more. Man, this thing is sluggish. Really, really sluggish. Let's get an external shot as we're coming in here. Actually, I'm kind of afraid to get out of the cockpit. Look at that beauty. Oh, I just realized our tail number is a little bit inappropriate there, and it's also right in front of us above our artificial horizon. Well, sorry about that, guys. That's how I felt when I found out Chet's wife was coming with us. I mean, it's really hard to get lined up for your final here, because it just moves so slowly back and forth. Alright, can we see this castle around here? I don't know where it would be from here, but I need to concentrate on the runway anyway. We're a little bit high, according to the Pappies. I mean, I feel like we're in molasses. It's so slow to respond. Oh my gosh. Alright, so we're going to have to give it a little rudder here to keep this thing lined up. I mean, I am moving that yoke around, and it's just not giving me any feedback. But that may be true to life. I have not flown this baby in a while. I mean, you'd think it'd be like the 850 or something like that, 950. Doesn't feel like that at all. Very sluggish.
500.
Thank you. Alright, so we're not quite lined up here. I'm going to have to do a little rudder action once we get closer. And try not to stall. Once we get down, we'll probably overshoot the taxiway turnoff, so there's a little... After that cross runway there, there's a little helipad that we'll pull over on that. Look at little NavMap. Jeez. Alright, that worked out okay. And cut the throttle. And now you're just going to float on me forever. That's alright, we'll get her down. We got plenty of runway left. And we got a reverser. Alright, flaps up. And throw it in reverse. And there's our little helipad right there on the left. Okay, let's bring it right up over there so we don't have to do a 180 on the runway. Park it, check a little nav map, and then we'll wrap it up. That did not feel like 50 minutes, but I wasn't really watching the clock. I feel like we covered that a little bit quicker than that, but very cool flight. Thank you for the recommendation, as always. Alright, so that's that. Was it worth it? Yes, of course it was. We always have a good time out here. Alright, parking brake on. And let's see, I guess we'll just cut the condition lever off. That should do the trick.
Warning, essential bus.
I got you. I got you. Back on. Batteries on. I don't know if I'm doing these in the right sequence, but it'll get us where we need to be. Okay. So here comes... Let's open the window. Here comes a little nav map. A lot of stuff to see on this flight. Okay, so again, if you want these bookmarks, which will help you because some of this stuff is hard to spot, that link will also be in the video description, and I have a tutorial about how to get those into little nav maps. Super, super easy. Alright, so here's Catania, where we left from, and over here was the non-photogrammetry area. We kind of took a little peek at that as we were coming around, and then we came up to the port here, which, again, unfortunately, looks pretty good, but there's all the ships had trees in them. Here's that castle, which looked just like that. You can see the turrets they got on the sides of them there. And then here's our stadium, the only other thing we could really spot out here. Built in 1937. And somewhere up here, I saw something that looked like a basilica, but I forgot to slap a bookmark on it. I don't know where exactly that was, but if you keep an eye out your left-hand window, you'll see one that looks pretty good somewhere in this area right over here. And then we came out here to Etna Land. You know, that looks... It's closed during the winter months, but that's kind of a... They must not chlorinate that pool, because that looks a little bit green. Maybe they got some koi in there or something. But they got a lot of roller coasters and stuff out there. The whole area just kind of looks brown. In the U.S., everything's really brightly colored. Well, they got something that's kind of brightly colored, but that's it. Didn't look like much in the sim, but I felt like we had to point it out. All right, and here's the town of Paterno. And here is where that castle is, right there. Castello Normano. And somewhere around the base of that is where they found the treasure of Paterno. All that silver. And really, it just, all you could really see was the roof of that thing. So if you want to look for it, that's where it is. If you want to try to spot exactly where it is, look for this little loop right here. It's going to be just to the west of that. And then check this out. Here comes that big town on top of the mountain. Look at this. Centuripe. Look at that thing. How crazy is that? And again, you need to be at like 10,000 feet, maybe even more to really get a good top-down view of that. But that's what it looks like from above. Is that wild or what? Really, really interesting. I have not seen a spot like that on any of our flights yet that I can recall. Very cool. All right, here's Adrano over here, and their castle is right down here towards the center of town somewhere. And you can see it looks just like that one in that last town. Another Castello Normano. Not very impressive. But this is impressive. Well, there's the stadium, which looked actually just like that. Not a lot of seating there, is it? Probably not as big as that last place. I wanted to ask you guys what you think this is. So here's the big vineyard out here, and here's that thing they're calling a castle that was built in the 1800s. It's just a big winery. Boy, that looked just like that in the sim too, didn't it? You could see all those terraces and everything. But what do you guys think this is? There was nothing on that in the Google Maps. They obviously had a pool of some kind at some point. And I don't know if that's somebody's personal residence now or what, but I thought that was just kind of interesting, laid out there like that. Then we head on over to Etna. And you can see, well, this one's not as bad. On the Google map, they got a bunch of smoke coming over this way, so that's probably what was creating those problems. But how cool of a crater would that be to see if you could actually see anything in it? I didn't come around this side, though, so maybe from the other side it looks a little bit better. But you saw about the best there was to see from this side. And let's see if we can see that. So here's where the... Let's see how far back that line goes with those gondolas. That's a pretty long stretch, isn't it? And that's in Italian, so I don't know what they have up there, but I don't know if it's touristy or research. But that is a big volcano and dangerous. Erupts a lot. And I said most of the eruptions have really been since 2000. It's been a lot of them. It was like every year since 2000 they've had eruptions in that, which is more than normal. And you'll notice here that I've got some little markers of the flight level changes. Let me go back a little bit in case you're looking for that. This is the spots where I was doing the flight level changes, just so you can be aware of that. If you're wanting to look for it, climb to 5,000, etc. So if you're wanting to kind of mark that out, that would be a good way to do it. And then we came down to Taormina. And there's the Greek amphitheater there. And then here's the castle, which really did look like that in the sim. I mean, you could see this wall over here, and the only real structure in it is that tiny little thing right in the middle. But it's closed to the public now. You can get some nice views from down here. I saw some looking up the hill to it, but you can't go in there. At least not legally. All right, now where is the... All right, so this line right here must be the cable car line. Oh, and it doesn't go up to the castle. Not very long, is it? But you probably get a good view of the amphitheater. And that coastline looked 50-50. Not too bad. All right, so then we took our cruise up here, talked about the Mafia for a little bit. Some more of these tunnels. Check these things out. Look at that, just popping in and out of there. Those bridges look just amazing. And even this terracing, I mean, you could see that as you were coming by. Just great. Really great. Okay, so here is where that battery is, and now we'll take a closer look at it. You can see that's pretty small. I don't know. I mean, that probably could have taken a few 16-inch rounds before it came down. So I don't think that was World War II, though, but they were calling it a battery. They don't call many castles batteries. And then here's that castle that was up top, built by Frederick II, the same guy that built the big one back in Catania. Also not real big. I think you could actually see that, whatever that is, but that's the extent of it there. And then we headed up the mountain. That was a cool little town we saw along the way up the mountain, and came up to our sanctuary up here. And the fort that's not a fort. All right, so yeah, this must be the pilgrimage path, I'm betting, and you could kind of see that through that blurry stuff that they had out there. But that's pretty neat. That looked really, really good in the sim, so that was awesome. And then we came down here to the... Oh, I forgot to look for that stadium, but it would have been on the other side of the plane anyway. So here's our forts that we got out here. So here's Gonzaga, which looked just like that. Awesome. That was the one they built for fear of the Ottomans coming down from this direction during the 1500s. Here's the one that the Spanish built, which looked kind of like that. They put some roofs on stuff that probably shouldn't have had... Well, it looks better here in real life than it did in the sim, but you could tell it was a fort because you could still see these points sticking out over here. And then here's what's left of the other one, San Salvatore, and that looked just like that in the sim too. And then whatever this thing is here, probably something to the Virgin Mary because it's called something Madonna. And those must be all the Coast Guard ships. All right, so just a real quick sense of where those islands are, the volcanic islands. So this was that peninsula sticking out here that we saw from when we were over here. So that's about 15 miles out. Here's one clump of the islands over here. And again, look, no airports on any of them. So this is a really small one. I am going to take that flight next. That's a really small strip there. How long is that? Jeez, just over 1,000 feet. And then Stromboli is way out here. And there's no airports on that one. Look at that. Oh, yeah, we got to go out there for sure. All right, there's a little airport there. How big is that one? Also 11. Whew, boy, the only other big airport around here is the one we landed in, so I may have to take off from there unless I take a bush plane or something, but that'll take forever if I'm going 40 miles out. All right, let's look at these towers real quick. There's one of them. The pylons of Messina. And then here's the other one on the other side here. There it is. 1,200 feet, going 12,000 feet of cable going. And notice there's no bridges, so the main airport here, unless you're going to come all the way up from where we left from, is here. So you know there's a lot of ferry traffic going across that thing. I wonder if they got a tunnel going underground or something. Boy, that'd be a lot of ferry traffic. Okay, so last thing to show you is the castle that's down here. And that one does have a little bit more of a unique shape. So that's it there. Argonisi. But we were trying to make that approach, which was not easy, so we couldn't spot that. So that's Sicily. Awesome flight. And if you want to know where the capital is and where the Mafia hangout is, it's way over here. This is it, Palermo. And I took a flight. This is a photogrammetry city. This was not a good-looking flight at all. I left from this airport. I mean, everything out here looked really, really bad, and this city didn't look that good either. So I think we saw perhaps the best of what's available in Sicily. And it was a great flight. Learned all kinds of cool things, saw all kinds of cool things, took a cool plane out. Once again, absolutely awesome, and I cannot wait to see y'all again in the skies. Later.